New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Rev Robert with you over here.
Rev Z over here.
And we've got a very special guest with us today, Reverend Dr. Kenn Gordon, all the way from Kelowna, Canada, with us today. Thanks for being with us today, Dr. Kenn.
Thank you, sir. Trust to be a nice conversation.
Yes, exactly. So, longtime viewers to the show, you know that Rev Z and I come to you every Tuesday here on the New Thought Media Network for a conversation around the guiding principles, philosophy of New Thought and religious science. And over the last several weeks, we've been looking at the original, what's known as Declaration of Principles, or What We Believe, as written by Dr. Ernest Holmes. I forget exactly way back when, how long ago, but I know it was way back when, and wrapped that up a few weeks ago. But we wanted to have a couple of conversations with some folks that have some a deeper history and knowledge, I would say, with these statements than just myself and Rev Z. So again, Dr. Kenn, welcome, and thank you for being with us. Why don't you take a minute and tell everybody who you are? I'm
Kenn Gordon. I live in Kelowna, British Columbia. Let me think. For 5 years, I was president of Religious Science International. I helped walk us through into the integration process with the United Church of Religious Science, or United Centers for Spiritual Living, as we changed the names to it, and created CSL. And then I was the spiritual leader of CSL from 2012 to 2020. So I am now retired. I'm back up north, living in my beautiful community in town, feeling a little pandemic tired. But basically, if you have to be isolated somewhere, this is as good a place as any. So I was telling these guys before the show started that the golf course is open in the beginning of March. So things are looking up.
Nice.
Things are looking up. There we go. All right. So the intent behind our show here, folks, today is, again, we want to explore these statements by Holmes, the what we believe. And so let's do a little switcheroo here and give us a quick, brief refresher over this. I'm going to run through these for you here pretty quick. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. We believe in the incarnation of spirit in every person, and that all people are incarnations of the one Spirit. Z, why don't you take the next one for us?
Sure. We believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding. We believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. We believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be obtained by all.
We believe in the unity of all life, and the highest God and the innermost God is one God. We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. We believe in the direct revelation of truth through the intuitive and spiritual nature of the individual, and any person may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God.
We believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thoughts and acts upon it. We believe in the healing of the sick through the power of this mind. We believe in the control of conditions through the power of this mind.
We believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. We believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny. for we understand that the life of each of us is God. So, Kenn, as a longtime minister and religious scientist, I'm sure you get it as much as everybody does when people ask, well, what do you believe after all? And, that would be a mouthful to try and recite and get somebody to understand. We do it every week, and I'm not sure it's effective. But when people come to you, of those guiding principles and ideas, how do you approach that question of what we believe, and which of these have been probably the most impactful for you?
Well, I try to summarize them and bring them down, condense them to the best of my ability. We believe in an infinite power that works through us and as us, and that we have the opportunity to work through it and as it, and that we do this through our belief system. And the manifestation is that we create in our life what we think about, and we create in our life what we truly believe. That belief is an interesting thing because it's not just conscious belief, it's unconscious and conscious. It's a total belief package that a person has. I've run into far too many people in my life who have a tendency to want to believe that this teaching is about what you know consciously, and to surrender your unconscious knowledge and not go within and do the healing work that's necessary to make it happen. My very favorite part of the principles is that the personal freedom one, which is, I believe that the ultimate goal of life is to be a complete emancipation from all discord of any nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. It's from this, really, that we created the vision for Centers for Spiritual Living, Science and Mind, Religious Science. And that vision is a world that works for everybody. And Dr. Holmes wrote this back in the 30s. The story behind it is that a newspaper journalist asked him what we believe. And he said, just a second and I'll tell you. And he went back into his bedroom and in 15 minutes came back out and he had the Declaration of Principles written out in full, and he gave it to him, and that's where it came from. So back then he was believing in a world that works for everybody. There's lots of groups that have hung on to that, thank God, and I bless them, each and every one of them. First place I ever really heard it come up was Werner Erhard, and the Est movement really moved to believing in a world that works for everybody and using that as their vision. But I'm comfortable to be able to go back to Holmes and see that this actually came out at the turn of the last century, to be honest. And if that doesn't mean a world that works for everybody, I don't know what does. I believe in the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature. And the part that I really like is, and it's sure to be attained by all. Yeah. And that's where we're working for. That's what we're doing with the whole teaching. The only purpose we have is to bring the vision into experience and into reality. And it really doesn't matter how long it takes to make that happen. We go on God's time, but eventually it must become the manifest truth of the world and the experience that's there. And every single thing that ever takes place in the world today is bringing us to that place and bringing us to that spot.
Yeah, and that's so true, because that idea of a world that works for everyone has been around. Dr. King and his whole beloved community, he speaks of that same essence of we have to create a world where everybody has equitable access and there's justice and there's freedom for everybody to share in the abundance and the well-being of life, which is the exact same thing stated in another modality, if you will. And that's the beauty of it, as you said, Ken, I think, because we have so many different ideological positions or philosophical approaches to life, but they all came up with this one idea of how do we get this thing so that everybody feels joyous and happy and has the ability to rise as high as their aspirations will take them.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not even just feeling joyful and happy. It's an understanding and an appreciation that the world works for you rather than thinking that there's something that's working against you.
Yes.
And that's the most dangerous place that we can go to, because that is the petri dish of fear, where we begin to develop and build from that, and it becomes a neuroses within the human race. If you go back to the ancient tribes, you'll find that they lived quite peacefully with very little, because they were at one with what they were in connection with. And suddenly you find yourself in a situation where you become envious of what everything else that's going on, and you see what the alternatives are, and it sparks that within you. And you can either use it by saying, there before me goes the hope of my life, or the desire of my life, or you can say, what a crappy place that I don't have that and everybody else does.
Yeah.
You remember the what was it called? The Arab Spring?
Yes.
I mean, all these things are birthed out of people garnering knowledge and understanding that life doesn't have to be the way that they're accustomed to living it. And when that happens, when that occurs, what occurs is that you have a choice, and you can choose. And I'm certainly not saying choose to settle. I'm saying, though, choose to put that vision forward in your life, to move into the vision, and do it with as much joy and happiness as you can possibly do. And unfortunately, it takes a great deal of patience to be able to move there. Deborah, my wife Deborah, and I were in Tunisia when the revolution took place, right at the beginning of the Arab Spring. And I got to tell you, if you're looking for a third world country, that's what we were seeing at that particular point. Mm-hmm. And it was such a juxtaposition. It just blew me away, because we're driving in this tour bus, and down one side of the bus, the tour guide keeps pointing out, and there's this beautiful lagoon, and the lagoon is filled with flamingos. It's just absolutely pink with flamingos. And every time I would look away from the flamingos, I'd look to the other side of the road, where there was just dirt streets covered in concrete dust with little kids playing on it. And it was heartbreaking when you looked at it. Yeah. World doesn't have to be like that. Yeah. It can be a world where you can have the beauty everywhere, and we have to grow through some stuff to get to the place where we can even understand that. It's not limited by finances. It's not limited by lack in any way, shape, or form. What it's limited by is the willingness for people to have a different idea than the one that they've entered into already.
Yeah, and you know, one thing, Ken, you brought to mind, when we look back at the early city states, if you will, and they had their problems like everybody else, but there's one thing about those early city states that were in the ancient times. They understood, number one, their integralness with their surroundings, and they understood that it took everybody to have equitable access and everything that was needed to be in this cosmic dance, if you will, with everyone there and nature itself. So they begin to understand that we have to work together. There's no one group, or there's no small one tribe that can create a safe haven for everybody. And so when we begin to think that way again, and not begin to separate in these factions that are antagonistic against each other, but understand we have the group that does the planning, and we have the group that does the harvesting, let's say, just as an example, then we can begin to say, okay, now this is working, and you have the ability to move if you don't like to harvest, if you want to plant, but we have to begin, I think, and what I'm hearing you saying is that there's this integral relationship between events, persons, places, and things that we have to begin to wrap our head around and understand this is how life goes.
Yeah, everything, I'm totally in agreement with you, Reverend Z. I like this topic. I'm glad it's fired up. Everything in the world has a purpose. We know that from a scientific point of view. You know, most of us are well educated enough, at least in North America, that we understand that every living thing is there to accommodate and work with every other living thing.
Yes.
And so we have this magnificent tendency to say that everything is perfect, whole, and complete on the outside except ourselves. And maybe perhaps we can thank the line that said, "And God gave humankind," or mankind is what it was written as, "dominion over the earth." Well, that's so much hogwash. The simple fact of the matter is that we're part of the wholeness of it. And if we all were to live from our true nature, and I'm talking about the true nature, I'm not talking about the neuroses, I'm not talking about the nature that says I should, or I could, or I will, or I would. I'm talking about where you were born to. We would come together like a mosaic and work in perfection. Everybody would bring skills and talents forward. But instead, we live within a mindset, a zeitgeist, that says you have to do this to be complete and whole. You have to achieve this. You have to own this. You have to have this. And when we come from that place, instead of understanding the divinity of the nature of who we are in the first place, then the end result is we're always in competition with each other to be able to get somewhere. And this new mindset that's taking over the world, that's being birthed right now, that is could be conceived or perceived as being very, very painful. This new mindset that's coming out is the movement from the competitive consciousness to the creative consciousness, to be able to move us so that what we do is we get to fulfill ourselves and be who we are and know that we fit in, and that there is no judgment from society around it. Instead, there is an acceptance. And when we operate from the foundation of the truth of who we are, once again, not from the idea of lack or not from the idea of missing, what will happen is we'll have a world that works for everyone.
Yeah. I love that part. It's moving beyond the competition, moving into that place of cooperation, collaboration, and co-creation is the way I like to say it. The 3 C's, right? We learn to cooperate with each other, and that leads us to collaborating with each other, and that leads to a recognition that we're co-creating this thing with the divine and with each other. And it can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. I'll be straight up with you. Try to take soccer. Let's dismantle the competition in youth sports and places like that. Is a whole other topic. But even within myself, it can be tough when I see something online or somewhere and go, "Ooh, ow! I that could have been my." And half the time, I think it's more competition with myself, even.
And the thing that I think can help transform that whole competitive piece is that we square off, if you will, but the idea of squaring off is not to beat you down or not to belittle you or all the things that goes through the competitive mind to win, but it goes in a fashion that let's see who can channel the most creative spirit between us. Let's see who can have that outermost God and the innermost God come so closely aligned that what I'm doing, as they say in sports world, I'm in the flow. You stop playing, really. You just sit there and watch me because I'm moving so much in the flow that you just like, I don't even want to stop it, right? And so when we can begin to look at the competition as such, then it becomes, I think, an elevation point. And I think also back to what Ken was saying before, I think this coronavirus thing that we're dealing with, it gives us a great platform and opportunity to do just that, because we have so many systems, the economic system, the healthcare system, the news system, the political system, the racial system, all of these systems as they stand now that have been based on competition are failing. They've shown that they cannot stand the test of time. So we have a chance to get in line with God and co-create together something that will definitely be a world that works for everyone, I believe.
It's a right step forward. It's got to happen. It's been put into mind enough over the centuries that eventually it must become the manifest destiny of what we're doing. That's what Holmes said in his Declaration of Principles, that there's one indestructible power that must be made manifest. And we're all headed in the same direction. And the difference between anybody on this planet is exactly this much: nothing. But there's only one life. And that life is God's life, and it is everywhere present, and we individualize it. And we're learning to be able to understand that the individualization of that needs to be more in line with the replication of the perfection of it, of the divinity of it, rather than the replication of the neuroses or the minutia that comes and shows up with it. There's no reason why anybody should be hungry. There's no reason why anybody shouldn't have opportunity to get an education. There's no reason why anybody should have water issues. There's no reason for any of that except the lack of a willingness for us to make a different choice and make a different world. So instead of having 1% of the people owning everything because they won the game of competition, it's possible for everybody to have everything.
Yeah.
In 2008, when the markets all crashed and everything happened, you might remember that time. I remember at that particular point, I was giving a talk at the World Parliament of Religions in Melbourne, Australia. And the topic I was given was the sustainability of food and water in the world today. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that I was a farmer in California for 12 years. So I was used to growing stuff. And I remember using the analogy of seeing a 640-acre field being plowed under because the market wasn't good enough and taking all the food off of it. And I asked the corporate farmers why they just didn't give it away. And it was the obvious answer is, well, if we give it away, then we can't sell it, then we can't grow it, therefore we wouldn't have it. That's a system. It's an economic system. I was telling this once and somebody called me a Marxist, and I'm not a Marxist. I'm a pragmatic idealist. And but I remember the setup on the whole thing is that we have all the food in the world. We have the ability to be able to create more than enough. We have an ability to be able to live in a clean environment. Why don't we? And the reason is because we are addicted to the system that we were raised in, instead of opening the door for a new system to take place. And it's not going to be called communism, socialism, capitalism, democracy. It's going to have a new name and a new version. And it's actually going to be one that frees not only humanity, but frees this world, in my opinion. A world that works for everyone.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, brother. Folks, if you like what you're hearing here, then hang on, because we're going to keep doing more of this. We're going to keep doing this. But before we do, I want to let you know about something else that happens on Saturday mornings. Hang tight with us for a second. We'll be right back. And this is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. If you're just joining us, myself and my co-host, Reverend Z, we're here today with special guest, Dr. Kenn Gordon. We've been talking about, well, man, if you missed the first segment, then just, wow, you're going to go back and watch it later. But Kenn, we want to talk real briefly about Saturday. So we just shared that little promo there for Saturday mornings in the Science of Mind lecture series, and we've got you on tap. You're wonderful, wonderfully have agreed to be a part of this program with us, and you're going to be sharing the talk with us on Saturday. Share with us a little bit what we might expect.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I haven't even started thinking about it, but obviously I'm speaking on soul, which is good. Yeah, I'm. You know, the birthplace of all creativity is the soul, and that's what we'll be talking about. I trust, I hope. Who knows where it'll go?
Yes.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, you know, Go ahead, Robert. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think I would have been a little disappointed if you told me you already knew what you were talking about. Because I don't know a single minister that starts to talk too much earlier than a few days at least beforehand. So I trust you'll be working on that, Saturday morning probably, right before we go live, right? I do.
Well,
See?
and you know, I love that, because the beauty for me is that if I do it too early, if I make it too scripted, I don't leave room for God to come in.
Right.
And then I inevitably lose my place in a script or whatever, and then I just mess the whole darn thing up. But when I can really get in line with that, allowing God and myself to have that wonderful two-step dance, then it just flows, and it talks about what we believe, that we are a living aspect of the divine itself. And so when we can make ourselves free from all discord and allow that spirit to move through us, then we can step into any place at any time and be fluid and know that God is working through us.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got a question for both you guys, because you're both what in the vernacular is referred to as pulpit ministers. You're both spiritual leaders of a community, and Ken, your community in Kelowna there, I know you co-lead that with your wife, and so I know you can't speak for her, but well, maybe you can. We'll see. But this whole last year, right, has been a major change, a major difference. What's been the gift in all of this for you guys as leading communities? New Thought Media Network, we're new within the last year. We're a representation of a new offshoot, if you will, in many ways because of what we've experienced. But you both have had to shift dramatically in I would imagine, your presentation, how you communicate with your community, how you support and uplift your community. And I'd love to explore a little more of that with the two of you while we've got you.
Well, I'll start, because mine will be short, in that I took over community 4 months before we went into shutdown. And so I had this grand plan of getting out into the community and making connection with the business in the area, and really trying to cultivate that community with everything and everybody in the area. And we were getting good traction, and everything was going, and then it shut down. And so at that moment, I wasn't prepared for going online in a consistent and an acceptable way, if you will. So that was a scramble, trying to get the practitioners and everybody online with the idea. So for me, it was a bit of a helter-skelter, but thank God it fell into place. And with the help of New Thought Media Network, we were able to create a presentation that's effective and consistent. And so that's been great. And so now my mind is, after being here a year and maybe being here for maybe, another 6 months or so, what is my strategy when we come out of this? How do we get people back in? Do we want people back in? How does that look? So that's my albatross, if you will, as I go to bed and try to think on the other side of it.
Dr. Ken, how about for you?
My answer was what happened that was really good and positive that came out of it with regard to the center, and the answer is everything. We were bricks and mortar church, a local community that would show up, and we would do it, and we would we'd film our services and put it out, but it really wasn't a big part of it. It was really the congregation that was before us, that was sitting in the seats, that we were concentrating on. So, like about March 1st, we did the first Sunday in March, we did last year, we did our usual service. And then suddenly Canada just shut down, and we weren't allowed to have anybody. So 6 of us got together, and we built a studio in our office over a period of a day and a half. And we set up and we started to go out Facebook Live. Just go see us on Facebook, Kelowna Center for Spiritual Living, CSL Kelowna, and 10:30 Pacific every morning, and we started up a service with 6 of us in the room with live music, trying to replicate what we had. And before we knew it, we had people from all over North America that were regular attendees in our service. And we started to grow and expand, and we realized how incredibly narrow-minded we were, thinking that we were just serving this one little group. Yeah. And suddenly opening up to the realization that virtually you can do everything. And so in the future, when we get to go back, we definitely go back to the bricks and mortar, but we'll never do it the same way again. We'll always be doing virtual, and we'll always be inviting people in. And instead of building a 900-seat theater, we'll build a 200-seat theater or have 200 seats and fill that as an audience to help generate the energy, but continue to reach out to others. You know, Michael Beckwith told me a couple of years ago, his Agape, the spiritual leader, Michael Bernard Beckwith of Agape. I was talking to him one day, and he said that his sanctuary had gotten flooded. And he was accustomed to having 5,000 people a day come out to services. And his sanctuary had flooded, and suddenly he didn't have a place to do services anymore. And so I said, "Oh, gosh, Michael, that must have been terrible." He said, "No, actually, it was sensational. We went virtual, and we started to produce our service on the internet." And he said the first Sunday we did it, we had over 300,000 people in attendance. Mm. And so, you know, the potentiality of reaching with this teaching doesn't have to be limited to the walls that you're in. You suddenly, and this is my aha, and I know people like you, Robert, and probably you've known this for a long time. You had that bug before you, and I saw it in other people where they were talking about it, but I had no way to put it into context until the pandemic hit and we were in isolation. Yeah. And suddenly I realized what a limited opportunity we were giving the world to be able to reach out and touch them, and what an incredible audience is there if we're only willing to do things a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I got out of it. And like I say, our center will never be the same since. It will be better. And that's exactly where we're moving to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget, Z, maybe you were there in ministerial school at one point. There was a story that we had been told and we had heard that in the very early visionings for the Agape International Spiritual Center, there was a visioning, and what came through for somebody was that Reverend Michael would be seen live worldwide on Sunday mornings. And this was before live streaming, and this is before we have any inkling of what the internet is actually going to be and do. And it was around, but it wasn't like what it is today. And now we all have that opportunity. We all have that ability. So his community saw that. They saw that long before they knew what they could do with it. And yes, he was a forerunner at getting into the live streaming. And now we've all been asked and called to say, okay, you're global, go.
Yeah.
Let the world know what this message is, what we stand on, what these principles are, what we believe. Really.
And the interesting thing about that, I was in some venue and the question was asked about back to the word of competition, the competition between centers and trying to trying to fill this space and operate in what we have. And the question came up, and for me, the answer was, there's room at the table for everyone, because if we're each a center in the mind of God, our articulation of how God works and how we co-create and interact with God will be slightly different in a lot of cases, and vastly different in another. So it gives us an opportunity, as both of you were saying, to reach out to a community that may not have never heard of us. It hasn't been given to them the right way, with the right metaphors or the right similes or whatever that kicks that spark in them. And then they say, I need to listen to this again. And so I think it really gives us, again, one of my pet peeves, it gives us the opportunity to really get in alignment with the divine and figure out, as we know, what's mine to do and how do I deliver this. And then we just say, okay, I can't worry about what everybody else is doing. I can only do what I can do anyway. So let me just do that. And like the field of dreams, if I do that, those who are attracted, those who are resonating with that vibration will come.
Yeah.
Amen.
Ken, you picked up a new viewer. Our dear friend Terry Paul Choice from Nova Scotia says, very true, Ken. In the future, services will need to be live and virtual. Our church in Nova Scotia has a thriving virtual congregation. In the future, I'll watch your services too.
Amen.
And, you know, that's the other beauty, right, guys? I joked this week, but this past Sunday at 8 o'clock Mountain Time, I gave a talk in Ohio. At 9 o'clock Mountain Time, I was hanging out in Midtown Atlanta with Reverend Dr. Bob Dean. 10 o'clock Mountain Time, I was hanging out with Rev Z over at the Center for Spiritual Living, Denver. I don't remember where I went at 11 o'clock, but I'm sure maybe to breakfast. But we each have this ability to tap into the style and the voice that most resonates, where we can really be influenced, inspired, uplifted, and say, yeah, I'm ready to go out there and be a part of this vision. This thing about creating a world that works for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a mighty vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, I think the beauty of it, I mean, from the Science of Mind and Spirit portfolio, if you will, we've always had the mantra that this is an ideology, this is the teaching for the times. Well, if we didn't quite believe that then, I mean, we should really believe it now, because when we look at what we're faced with and what the teachings provide us, I mean, if we just look at the first statement of the textbook, right? Ernest said, I look forward to the day that spirituality and religion will walk hand in hand. Well, right now, that is more prevalent, it is more palatable, and it is more accessible than any other time. You know, there's the saying that there used to be a time when scientists would say, oh, I don't believe in God. But now almost all scientists say, yeah, I believe in God, because when I look at the relationship between these two things, it's just the flip side of a coin. And we haven't been looking at it in its totality, in its wholeness. And that's what life is calling for us now. We have to begin to be more holistic in how we live and act and think and co-create with the divine.
And here's the thing. We're being pulled to become more creative in that way. You know, so you can look at the pandemic as a curse, and there's a lot of good reasons to do that with 500,000 dead in the United States. But you can also look at it as a wake-up call.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You can look at the political state, the separation that's going on, it appears to be going on in the world today. You could look at that as a negative, or you could look at it as a positive.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's going to work. Spirit, that the intelligence for good that runs through the universe is going to eventually dissolve and dissipate anything that isn't good. The line I use with my students is that Spirit loves you so much it'll pull you through cheesecloth to have you. It literally will yank you through whatever it is in order to get you balanced and get you knowing the truth of yourself and the truth of the world that's around you. And we know from past experience that the way to get there isn't to fight it. Any common sense, logical, intelligent person knows you don't fight the infinite. What you do is you surrender to it. When you surrender to it, what will happen is it comes to you.
Yes.
Otherwise, you live your life in struggle. And so what we have before us right now for the last couple of years, for the last few decades, for the last 1,000 years, for the last 100,000 years, is what Troward says is the evolution of humanity.
Yeah.
We are awakening, and we are awakening constantly and consistently. And as we awaken, what we are doing is we're being drawn and attracted into a higher way of thinking than we ever thought before. My kids are more spiritual than I ever dreamt of being, And it's because they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're evolutionary generation behind, so therefore they have a closer contact already. And that's what life's supposed to be about. Life's supposed to be about constantly expanding to the greater idea. And those of us who are old dogs are just being stuck if we're not willing to surrender to it. Believe me, it will win.
I said this yesterday. I've been saying this for a long time, and I got a feeling you both agree with me on this one. This philosophy is the fountain of youth. And you've just added a big key to the explanation of that, Dr. Kenn, right? Because when we stop learning, when we stop growing, when we stop participating, that's when the stagnation sets in. And that's when aging sets in. And that's when we start to buy into, oh, well, I'm getting old. And, oh, well, the body don't work the way you're used to it. And excuse after excuse after excuse. But this philosophy, this way of life calls us to continually be growing, to continually look at things differently, to explore, hey, yeah, that's the way it always used to be, but what's the new way for it to be? Yeah. And that way, I hope it's not being pulled through cheesecloth, but maybe just kind of slipping behind the curtain a little bit.
And the thing that this is one of my patents, and there's a saying in Islam that says, if God had not revealed any sacred scriptures, nature is the best of scriptures that you could ever read or take part of. And so when we look at nature, as you were saying about being stagnant, we know that if we look at water, if it gets stagnant, it's going to get algae. We understand that. I mean, you may have to look at it 2 or 3 times, but it won't take long for you to figure out there's no more fish in that water. That water is starting to smell because it's stagnant. And there are many other examples about that. And so when we can begin to use nature, God's permanent creation that follows exactly what God has asked it to do, we can find the answer, I believe, to any problem, because it will instantaneously pop into our mind, right? Through instant revelation or communication with the divine. And then, we're on point. And now Robert is going to smile immensely when I use this because, Ken, my patented thing is the $6 million man. If you remember that series, the astronaut was, he was almost dead. And they said, yeah, but we have the knowledge, we have the technology, we have the know-how and the people to put him back together better, stronger, faster, more in tune. And that's what we got right now. And we just got to pick it up and believe we can do it and say, all right, let's get done.
And we're just learning how to use the equipment, is what you're saying. I got it. Yeah. What you're saying is this personal revelation part of the Declaration of Principles that Holmes wrote. I believe in the direct revelation of truth through the intuitive and spiritual nature of humanity, and that any person may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God. And, you can choose any word you want. You can, the Islamic, Muslim, to say, there are 99 words for God, and one of them is Robert. Yes.
Yes.
And so I don't want to get stuck on the wording of it, but what you're saying is all you have to do is look around you. You think turning water into wine was a miracle? Man, giving birth to a baby is a miracle. You think raising the dead is a miracle? Life
raising a teenager is a miracle.
It's everywhere. And the other thing is that it's abundant and it's beautiful.
Yes.
It blows me away with its beauty, providing I wake up and look at it instead of looking at the grief that's all around that I could choose to hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is just, that is key, because to me anyway, because that idea of holding on, the moment I realize that I'm holding on to something, right? Nature causes my body to tense and everything, and my heart starts beating, my breath gets shallow. But the moment I can just surrender to that moment, whatever it is, whether it's joyous or non-joyous, whether it's, abundant or non-abundant, doesn't matter, because as you said earlier, there's only one life, and that life is God life, and that life is our life now. So when we surrender into that, all of that stuff goes away, and through the revelation of the creative connection to the divine, the answer comes.
If you're not spending your energy of awareness on what you want, then you're spending it on something else. I got news for you. That something else is becoming your reality.
Yes.
You know, that's how come where it demands us to see the beauty. Because when you see it, we attract more of it. We see it more often and better. And that's been the key to all the great avatars throughout history, all the great teachers that have ever been. They've all taught the same thing, that life is beautiful. Take it, look at it.
Yeah. Focus on what you want, let God take care of the how.
Yeah.
When we get stuck on the how, that's all the humanness, and focus on what we want in the divine, and God takes care of the how. And I want to give everybody a chance to experience, to see a demonstration of that, because what I'm going to share with you next is exactly a demonstration of that. We focused on what we wanted around here on New Thought Media Network, and this is how God shows up. So Z, you're rapidly becoming the second busiest guy around this network. Share with us for a brief moment. Tell us a little bit about what we just saw there and what we might experience this evening.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's this young writer and film director, Sekou Wright, and he has a movie short. I think the movie is maybe 9 minutes, close to 10 minutes in the movie short category, and it's up for a couple of awards, or and we won't tell you what that is now. Tune in tonight, and you can hear about it. But it's again in this month of Black History. It's again trying to look at how we have created divide based on how we think, without understanding this is a world that works for everyone, and there's a place, as Ken said earlier, for everyone. We just got to figure it out. And so in that movie, we talk about his findings in terms of some interactions that he had, and what kind of thought pattern created the situation, and the thought pattern that helped them move beyond the situation. And so please join us tonight if you can. It's promising to be a great opportunity for us to continue this conversation of race and humanity and equanimity and love. How do we bridge this gap and find love and co-creation to make this world work for everyone?
Yeah, thank you. And because of an agreement with the creators, the director, and other entities, this will not be archived in our public archives. So this isn't something you're going to be able to tune into later or check out on a replay. Please be with us this evening, 6 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock, or 6. Sorry, we've been doing this all day. 6 p.m. Pacific, 7 o'clock Mountain, 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, and that'll be about midnight or 1 o'clock in the UK.
Yeah.
All right, so gentlemen, we've got just a little bit of time left here in what we're allotted to share on this experience. How about a future vision? We've got this world that we've got all these statements, and we've got to grasp. And I think if you've been watching this show, folks, you do have an idea on how you're being called to be part of this great vision. What are we creating, guys? What's it going to look like? A world that works for everyone.
Oh, well, I really like to believe, and I'm holding that vision true, is that we I mean, I'm from the South, and you know, my grandfather had a farm, and I understood. I mean, him and his brothers, they had like 300 acres of land almost. And so when I think about what it took to farm that land and to generate a harvest, it was everybody working together. No, because if we didn't work together, there was stuff not being harvested. There was, you know, there was all kinds. There was chickens who were not getting the eggs, and so they sat on them too long, and they turned to chickens and not eggs. And so this integral approach where everybody understands that no matter what the situation, we can get through it if we work together. And sometimes you may have to do something you don't like, but that's okay. The end results, to have that meal on the table, if you will, or have those produce ready to sell at the farmer's market to generate some income, to do that exchange of energy, was well worth it. And so that's what I'm hoping we move back towards. And that's what I know and believe in my heart that we are. This interrelated relationship between all aspects of life working together to create a solid, unified oneness.
All righty. There you go, Ken. He set you up.
Yeah, he sure did. Yeah, I think a unified oneness is where we're moving to, a recognition and a realization that we've never been separate, period, ever. And it's the awareness of it. And I think that where I'm moving in my life is I'm moving towards that place of freedom. You know, I retired a year ago, and obviously I'm still doing things like this, but I'm only doing what I want to do. And I'll tell you what's interesting about that is I'm not doing stuff that I don't want to do for exterior reasons. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm really checking in with myself when I take an activity or do an action, whether or not I wanted to do it. But if I get invited out for lunch, I ask whether or not I'm willing to do that. I want to do that. And if I do, I do it. If I don't, I don't. And that's been a freedom which has been uncovering for me all of the misguided reasons why I might have done something in the past. And I've always been a person who did it for the joy and the feeling of the accomplishment that came with it. But even now, I'm finding little areas of activities that I've done in my life that are being done for extracurricular reasons rather than for the real ones. And so I think that what will happen for humanity is when it wakes up, it will stop doing things because they want to do it or change their mind about why they're doing it, rather than doing it out of resentment and spite and having stuff held on. And with that freedom, what happens is that all the health and the flow of the universe enters into your life, and you suddenly start living that life of joy. And it's so much easier to see and to witness than to experience, because you're not being stuck in an idea that you have to do something against your will.
Beautifully said. Thank you. And you, again, articulated a great example I had today. I was this close to telling my son, well, you know, you just got to get through this so you can get a good job, so you can earn enough money, so you can get out of my house and take care of yourself and do this and do that, do that. And I had to stop myself. I said, wait a minute, well, hold on. Whoa. That's buying into the old limited paradigm that we have to do what we have to do to pay the bills or to put food on the table, or to all the various ways we've been taught to say that, to articulate that concept. What I love and what I hear from both of you, and you know, what I would add to it as well, folks, is that we're moving into a place where all these words actually become demonstrated, where it's not just a vision of a world where there's enough food and we're free of homelessness. There is a world, and we're living that moment by moment by moment, day by day. And I believe we do that in a lot of different ways, but much as we've talked about today, right, guys? We got to listen and then follow the inspiration.
Do your spiritual work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We've got, anybody read Arabic?
Yeah, I just responded to it.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you, Terry. Live broadcasting, folks. We go all over the planet. We go all over the world. I got no idea what's being said, but we'll figure it out and make sure that if it shouldn't be here, we'll get rid of it. If it should, we'll leave it here. Yes. So thank you for being with us. Dr. Kenn, thank you for being with us. Remind everybody on the program, how can they stay in touch with you? How can they catch Kelowna's broadcasts on Sundays?
It's Facebook Live, 10:30 Pacific. And it's at CSL Kelowna. Just put into Facebook CSL Kelowna, and you'll see a live performance at a live service at 10:30. So that's the best way to get hold of our center right now. Otherwise, that's about all I'm doing. I'm doing like you are. I'm speaking all over the place. But
yeah, and you're smiling about it. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Z, how about for you? How do people stay in touch and get and tune in?
Yeah, www.csldenver.org. You can find us there, and from there you can find us on Facebook, and just shoot us an email, like us on Facebook, and we'll get there.
And featured on the New Thought Media Network Sunday broadcasting. Yes. Yeah. I love you, my brother. We tease you. Z and I are talking. He is really the second hardest working guy in New Thought Media Network. The only person working tougher than him is a woman. I think I come in at third. So, all right, folks, we're going to wrap this up for today. Thank you for being with us. This is New Thought Today. We're here every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Mountain Time, having a conversation around and exploring the emerging paradigm of life on planet Earth from a religious science and an integral perspective. Dr. Kenn, thank you so much for being with us today, sir. We hope you'll come back and join us again sometime.
My honor.
Right on. All right, folks. Let's hit one more little spot and give CSL Denver one more little plug before we get done here today. Check it out. Thursdays, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, noon Eastern. A healthy dose of Jersey Girl wisdom. Live with Rev Jersey Girl. Sponsored by New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.